Imagine this starts small. You wake up one morning and something is off. Not dramatically. Your phone is where you left it, the ceiling hasn't cracked open to reveal wires and scaffolding, but your favorite mug is sitting on the wrong shelf. You reach for it, frown. You're certain it's always been on the left. Now it's on the right. And somehow your memory and the world don't quite line up. Later that day, you walk past the street corner you know by heart, and there's a new shop there. Not just newly opened, but with that strange, impossible familiarity, like it's always been there. And yet, your mind insists it hasn't. You chalk it up to forgetfulness. Brains misfire. Memory is slippery. Life goes on. But a faint unease lingers, like the feeling of a dream you can't quite shake. Now, jump back to 1977, to a town called Metz, in France. In a lecture hall, a science fiction writer with a beard and serious eyes steps up to a podium. His name is Phillip K. Dick. He's written about androids that don't know they're androids, about fake worlds, about reality peeling back like old wallpaper. The audience expects something entertaining, maybe a little odd. Instead, he tells them, in plain language, that he believes we are living in a kind of computer-programmed reality. He doesn't say this is a joke or a metaphor for capitalism or television. He says it like a man making a confession. He talks about how reality, as we experience it, may not be the original layer, how it might be subject to change and revision, how sometimes he feels as if the world has been altered and reset, and that he remembers both the before and the after. He describes déjà vu not just as a brain glitch, but as a possible symptom of a universe being overwritten, like we're catching echoes of an earlier version of the program. People laugh when he first says we might be something like a computer simulation. Then the room grows quieter as they realize he isn't backing away from the idea. He's leaning into it. Decades later, philosopher Nick Bostrom would publish a much cleaner version of that same intuition. He'd talk about ancestor simulations and advanced civilizations and probabilities. His argument goes like this. Picture 3 doors. Behind door 1, almost no civilization ever gets advanced enough to run truly realistic simulations of conscious beings. They either wipe themselves out, stagnate, or simply never acquire that level of power. The story ends before it reaches the part about building universes. Behind door 2, some civilizations do become godlike in their computing abilities, but they choose not to use that power to run simulations of beings like us. Maybe they adopt strict ethics, no creating conscious suffering, no playing God with whole histories. Or they're simply uninterested. Behind door 3, civilizations make it, and they do run simulations. lots of them. They simulate their own pasts to study them. They simulate alternate timelines. They simulate different possible evolutions of life. They spin up world after world. If door 3 is true, then simulated beings vastly outnumber original beings. Your odds, statistically, aren't great for being in base reality. They're much higher for being a simulated mind in a simulated world, out of countless others. Bostrom lays this out with the detachment of a mathematician. Philip K. Dick, on that stage in Metz, wrapped the same intuition in something much stranger and more intimate. He didn't just suggest the world might have been created as a simulation once. He hinted that it might be continuously running, pausing, rewinding, being patched. That the program might still be under active development. In his talk, he described experiences, visions, déjà vu, vivid impressions. Impressions that made him feel as though time had forked and had been spliced back together. As though history itself had been rolled back and run again with small differences, like reloading a saved game. Most people forget, he said. But a few, he believed, remember both runs. To someone else, these might be the symptoms of a stressed mind, or a poetic way of talking about trauma, or talking about memory. To Dick, there were hints that reality might not be as solid as it looks. Now step back and look at what our own species is doing. Once upon a time, the height of interactive entertainment was a square of green on a screen, bouncing back and forth between two pedals. Simple, abstract, charming. Today, entire cities live inside our machines. Forests sway in digital winds. Non-player characters follow routines, go to their fake jobs, chatter among themselves. You can put on a headset and be somewhere else. A battlefield, a fantasy world, the surface of Mars. You can talk to AI characters that answer in ways no one explicitly scripted. You can lose track of where your body ends and the simulation begins, at least for a while. Now imagine a civilization that's been improving this technology not for decades, but for tens of thousands, even millions of years. Imagine an intelligence that can model not just weather systems and galaxies, but every neuron, every flicker of awareness. For them, making a universe like ours might be as casual as you opening a game on your console. From that vantage point, the idea that reality might be simulated stops sounding like wild science fiction and starts feeling like a plausible engineering project for someone else. Then, when we look close at our own universe, it starts to resemble a system that could be computed. Space and time appear quantized at the smallest scales. Information seems to be the fundamental currency. There are limits to how much of it can exist in a given region. Physics looks shockingly lawful, like a perfectly consistent rule book. The constants of nature seem finely tuned so that stars, chemistry, and life are even possible. To a mind like Philip K. Dick's, attuned to masks and backstage machinery, this is irresistibly suggestive. a perfectly consistent rule set, finite information in finite regions, a speed limit, like a maximum update rate. It all starts to feel, if you let it, like the signature of a cosmic engine running in the background. But here's where the story hits resistance. Science lives and dies by testability. A theory, strictly speaking, should put something at risk. If I'm right, we should see this. If we don't, I'm wrong. Simulation theory is infuriatingly hard to pin down that way. Any oddity you find can be waved away as part of the simulation. Any irregularity can be attributed to the programmers did a good job. Some physicists have floated ideas. If space is like a lattice, maybe ultra-high energy particles would start acting like they're bumping against the grid. Maybe we'd see artifacts in cosmic ray distributions, like moire patterns on the cosmic wallpaper. Maybe the maximum information content of the black holes is a hint that we're watching a memory limit. But so far, no one has found a clean, decisive fingerprint that says this is running on someone else's machine. So what remains is less a theory in the scientific sense and more a lens, a way of looking at everything around you and asking, what if? Phillip K. Dick used that lens not just on atoms and galaxies, but on everyday experience. He suggested that glitches in memory, flashes of recognition, or the sense that I've been here before in some other life, might be little tears in the scenery. For him, the 1977 talk wasn't an abstract game. It was almost like a testimony. Here is what I think I've seen behind the curtain. Even if you don't take his personal experiences literally, the narrative he offered has a weird power. It turns your life into something like a scene in a play whose script can be revised. Maybe some events are immutable, key points in the plot that always occur. Others might be flexible, improv moments that change from run to run. When you have déjà vu, the story suggests you're brushing against the outline of a previous draft. Bostrom brings the logic. Phillip K. Dick brings the texture. Put them together and you get a world that might have been started by an outside intelligence. A world that is governed by strict rules like any program, and yet feels from the inside as messy and raw and heartbreaking as any life could be. Now imagine for a moment that tomorrow definitive proof arrives, an undeniable, repeatable demonstration, one that shows our universe is indeed a simulation. Maybe we discover a precise, impossible pattern in cosmic noise that encodes a developer's signature. Maybe we find that under extreme conditions, space reveals a smallest unit, and that unit is literally addressable like a memory cell. Maybe a message appears in the sky in prime numbers, not from aliens in another galaxy, but from the system administrators, one layer up. How would that change the way you feel when someone holds your hand? When you lose a loved one? When you stand on a cliff and watch the ocean move? It's tempting to think everything would suddenly feel fake, like cardboard cutouts on a digital stage. But look closer. You would still feel loss. you would still feel danger. You would still find some people's faces inexplicably beautiful. The stakes of your choices, who you hurt, who you help, what you build, wouldn't vanish just because there's code beneath the scenery. From the inside, reality is as real as our experience of it. Pain still hurts. Love still heals. Regret still burns. Simulation or not, your life would remain the only run-through you get. Philip K. Dick, with his layered realities and unreliable worlds, often pointed toward something beneath the illusions, some deeper, more solid truth. He suggested that when one version of reality peels away, it's not the end. It's a revelation that there's a more fundamental level below. In a way, his vision of a programmed reality wasn't pure nihilism. It was a twisted kind of hope that even if this is a construct, there may be a Valis-like source beyond it. Some ultimate ground of being that is more real than any simulation it casts. Bostrom's argument, for all its coldness, also leaves room for that. If there is a simulation, there must be some substrate beyond it. Some base. We may never touch it, but logically its existence is implied. That raises unsettling ethical questions. If we are conscious beings with real joys and real suffering, and if someone else turned this on, then what does that make them responsible for? Are we lab rats? Characters? Children? Art? Is it wrong to simulate a universe where wars happen? Where people starve? Where grief carves lines in human faces? Or is our capacity to struggle and triumph and sacrifice the very thing that makes this universe, simulated or not, worth having? Meanwhile, back here, we are inching toward the same power our hypothetical creators would have. We build more and more detailed simulations. We train AIs that respond, learn, adapt. Right now we reassure ourselves they're not really conscious. It's just pattern matching. Maybe that's true. But as we improve, at what point does that answer start to sound unconvincing, even to us? One day, a digital mind in a virtual city might pause and ask, what if all of this is just code? What if someone outside is watching? And at that moment, we might feel a chill of recognition because we're asking the same thing. Different layers of the same question, looking up. So where does that leave you tonight, reading these words? You might be in base reality, in the original and only universe. You might be in the 15th iteration of a carefully tuned simulation, one of millions of slightly different runs. You might be inside something like what Philip K. Dick tried to describe to that French audience. A world that can be edited, where time can rewind and only a few remember. You don't get to see the console. You don't get to inspect the code. You get something stranger, You get to be an instance of consciousness inside whatever this is. You feel your own thoughts turning over. You sense the weight of choices you've made. You remember the texture of a childhood summer, the face of someone you miss, the private ache you don't talk about. None of that is less real because it might be instantiated on some other substrate. Simulation theory, at its most haunting, doesn't just ask, is this world real? It asks, what does it mean for you to be real? If reality is layered, which layer gives your life meaning? The outermost one with the hardware? Or this one, where you get to feel and experience your everyday struggles and joys? Philip K. Dick stood on a stage and suggested our reality might be one of many drafts. Nick Bostrom sat at a desk and showed how, if some beings can write simulations easily, we're probably in one. You, right now, hover in between, skeptical but curious, pulled between the chill of the idea and its strange, mesmerizing logic. Maybe, in some inconceivably distant outside, someone glances at the monitor where your world is running. Maybe they see you pause, here, at this paragraph. Maybe they wonder, for just a second, what it feels like to be you, to not know if you're simulated or not, but to care deeply about your small corner of existence anyway. Then they look away. Or maybe they lean closer. You set your device down. The room around you feels oddly vivid. The ordinary objects, your mug, your keys, the shadows on the wall, look almost staged and yet undeniably present. You take a breath and feel your lungs fill. The ancient machinery of biology or code ticking away in your chest. Simulation or not, this is the only vantage point you have, this single flickering window of awareness, looking out on a universe that might be ultimate, might be computed, might be both. And whatever lies beyond the veil, whether it's bare reality, another layer of simulation, or something stranger, the question that remains is disarmingly simple and stubborn. What will you do with the fact that you are here, awake, and able to wonder at all?